Hello and welcome back to the Multi-Platform Modding with Architecture series. Last episode we talked how to add an item, and now we're going to add a simple block to the game. Now, a block is essentially similar to an item in some ways, because we also need to register the block to the game, and we also need to provide model information, texture information, language information, etc. But the main difference is that the block technically consists of two different parts, because the block consists for one of the block itself, but also of the item that is shown in the inventory, because the block in the inventory is not the same as the block in the world. So let's start by creating a new package for all our block related things. We call it blocks, and then we create a new class for our tutorial mod blocks. So similar to the items, the first thing we want to create is a deferred register again. This time we create one for blocks. Choose the correct block here. The correct block is the Net Minecraft World level block. We call it blocks. And then as GitHub Copilot auto-completes here deferred register.create, then our mod ID tutorial mod ID, and then registries.block. This is the deferred register we need for our block. Next, we're going to create a init blocks method, which we can void init blocks, which we then can call from our main method later, from the main method in our tutorial mod later, so that the blocks can register here. Now, similar to the items, we are again adding two helper methods to make it easier and make the code more readable. These are the two methods. The first one, again, okay, let me import the things first. Again, here supplier, we choose the Java user function one. And then I explain what this does. So the top method, register block, is essentially just a wrapper around the deferred register, because we give it the name and a supplier for the block that we want to register, and then this method simply wraps the blocks.register call with the resource location creation for our namespace and the mod, so that we don't have to create the resource location every time when we register a block in the line itself. And the second method down here, the base properties method, we've also seen that for the items. This creates where for the items this created the item properties. Now here we create the block properties and again set the block ID, because this is a very long call and we don't want to write this line in every line where we create and initialize a block. And now that's pretty much everything we need for this class, and now we can define our block. And for this we say a public static, again a registry supplier for block, and we're going to add a Ruby block matching the Ruby we created in the last episode. Now in our init blocks we need to initialize this Ruby block, and for this we call our register block method, give it a name Ruby_block, and now again with the lambda notation we create a new block. And this block simply needs our base properties for the Ruby block. We don't need to add anything else here right now, because a block, as I said in the beginning, is not an item in the inventory. We're coming to that in a bit. But the block is simply the thing that is in the world, and so we don't need to set a creative mode tab, for example. And then, similar to the items, we need to call the register method on our deferred register, so that it actually registers everything to the game. That's pretty much everything we need to do in this class. And before I forget it last time, the first thing we're going to do is call this init method. And importance is that we call it before the item init method. The reason for this I'll explain in a bit. So we call the init blocks method here and everything's done. Now we have a block that can appear in the world, but we can't have that block in the inventory yet. For this, we're going to our items class, where we created a Ruby in the last episode. And here we're going to add now our Ruby block as well. So again, we create a register supplier for an item, this, and call it Ruby block. Important, this time we want an item. And this item, this Ruby block, we initialize down here, and we again call register item with the name Ruby underscore block, and then we use lambda notation. But now we don't want to create a new item, but we want to create a new block item, which is a different class. But this makes sure that this item is then associated with the block we created earlier. And what we need now is we first need the block, and for this we call tutorial mod blocks.rubyblock.get. And this is the reason why we needed to register the blocks before the items, because when we come to this, when this is executed down here with the items.register, this Ruby block also has to be registered already. That's why we need to register the blocks before the items. And then back here, base properties, again, similar to the last time. And again, we can add this block to a creative tab with the arc_tab method, creative mode tabs. And now let's choose, this is a building block, for example. There are my building blocks. And that's it for the code in this part. And with that, everything we need to do in Java is ready. We would now have a block in the game, but again, the block would not have name, would not have a texture, would not have model or anything. And for this, we are now going to our assets folders, because here we now need to create a lot of things. Let's start with the language, and the language is pretty similar. Again, item.tutorial mod.ruby underscore block, similar to the Ruby itself, and then we give it a name, Ruby block. Thank you very much, GitHub Copilot. And that's it. That's the language, similar as to the item. Nothing really changed here. Now, the first thing we want to add for the block are the block states. What are block states? A block state is simply how a block is in the world. And the block can have multiple states. For example, a redstone lamp can be on or off. Our block will only have one block state for now, but in a later episode, we'll probably do a block with multiple block states. So we create a block states folder in our assets.tutorial mod, and in this we create a new file and call it ruby underscore block.json. And in this file, we are going to define our block states. The code we need for this is this one here. So what we have here is, first we define the different variants. We only have one, so we put an empty string here, and then we say that the model is found in our tutorial mod at the blocks, and it's a Ruby block. And that's where the game should look for the model for every block state of this block. So let's go there and create this. For this, we're going to create a new directory, again, models, and then block, singular. That's the confusing thing. Sometimes we need things in plural, sometimes in singular. Sometimes we need things in plural, sometimes we need things in singular. Doesn't really make sense, but it's the way it is. And again, ruby underscore block.json. And the model is this part here. We first define the parent, and the parent for our Ruby block is blocks/cube underscore all, which is a simple cube, like most of the blocks in Minecraft, like a stone block, for example. And then we define the textures, and we say that all sites, that's what this all means, have the texture found in our tutorial mod. It's a block texture, and it's the Ruby block texture. If we have, for example, a block that has different textures on different sites, we could here specify all the different sites. But our block only has one texture, and speaking of texture, that is the next thing we want to do, is add a texture. For this, again, we create a new directory, textures/block, and in this block we can put our texture file. I've prepared the Ruby block file, again, similar to last time. I've simply recolored diamond block texture to this red color, and that's our texture. Now we have a texture, we have our block state, and we have our model. There's one thing still missing, and that is that our block would still not appear in the inventory properly because we haven't created the item for the block yet. And for this, we're going to our assets tutorial mod items folder up here, and again create a new file, ruby underscore mod block Ruby mod ruby_block.json. And in this file, we're going to put the following. We again first define a model, and the type is a Minecraft model, and then we say that the model is a tutorial mod block Ruby block. Simple as that. With that, the item would use the model for a block and then apply it to show in the inventory. That should be everything we need to do. So let's check if it works and start the game. So now we're in the game, and let's check if we have a block. We go to the building blocks, the creative mode tab, and scroll down to the bottom. And here we can see we have a Ruby block. This wonderful red block, we can place it in the world, and it looks like a block. It behaves like a block. It has a name. This was Neo4j. Let's check if it also works for Fabric. So let's start the Fabric profile and see you then. And welcome to Fabric. Again, open the creative mode. Scroll down in the building blocks tab. Scroll down in the building blocks tab. We find our Ruby block. We can place it. We can look at it. We can destroy it. We can drop the item. It's a block. So with that, you've learned how to create a block using Architectury. And in the next episode, I'll show you how you can add a custom creative mode tab to organize all your mod items and blocks and stuff in one place. See you then. Goodbye.